Welcome back to I Said It, I Am Not Sorry, the podcast where we tackle hot button issues, we dig into the most controversial topics, and we discuss what really matters. I'm your host, Ashon, and today we are talking about one of the most deeply debated issues in our country, abortion. Now, this is a topic that is very emotional, very political, and for many, deeply personal. We all come from different backgrounds and have different experiences. So if you're tuning in, I hope you'll keep an open mind. Today, I will be sharing my pro life perspective with some important exceptions. I believe in exceptions for cases of rape, incest, and when the mother's life is in danger. I'll also be diving into President elect Donald Trump's position on abortion. He's often perceived as strictly anti abortion, but that is not actually accurate, and I think it's important to discuss what his views really are. Then we'll look at some statistics and we will ask ourselves why our nation has moved to being anti abortion. But that's, neither here nor there. We'll throw around some statistics on abortion rates this year, which are repeatedly and reportedly the highest in recent years. And I want to explore why these numbers are rising and what it says about our society. Finally, we will talk about Planned Parenthood and whether it should be receiving federal funding, especially given that taxpayer money is involved. We'll cover a lot of ground, so let us get into it. So, first things first, let's set the stage. Let's look at why abortion is such a divisive topic in the United States. Since the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade in 1973, which legalized abortion nationwide, Americans have been deeply divided over the issue. The debate isn't just about medical procedures, it's about beliefs, rights, ethics, and for many, religion. You have people who believe that life begins at conception, myself being one of them, making abortion equivalent to taking a life or murder. Then you have people who believe that a woman should have the right to make decisions about her own body without interference from the government, without interference from their significant other, without interference from anyone or having to listen to anyone say. Fast forward to 2022 when the Supreme Court Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization decision overturned Roe, giving states the power to decide abortion laws individually. This ruling added fuel to the fire. And when I say fuel, you would have thought they poured 8 billion, when I say 8 billion, I mean 8 billion pounds of gasoline onto a fire. Now we see a patchwork of laws across the country. Some states have near total bans on abortion, while others are working to expand access. This means that a woman's access to abortion often depends on her zip code, and for many people, that's a problem. For me personally, I align with the pro life movement, but I believe in certain exceptions. Life isn't black and white, and there are situations where tough choices do have to be made. For instance, in cases of rape or incest where a woman faces unimaginable trauma or when carrying a pregnancy to term would endanger a mother's life, I believe there should be options available. I also think there should be a reasonable time limit on when abortions can be performed, which brings me to President elect Trump's stance. There's a common perception that Donald Trump is completely anti abortion, but I know that not to be true. Trump's position has been clear, but it's also more nuanced than some might think. He supports exceptions for cases of rape, incest, and situations where the mother's life is in danger, which is often a middle ground stance compared to most extreme positions. Trump has also suggested a time limit on abortions. He's mentioned that abortion access should be limited around to 12 to 15 weeks. The time frame is around the end of the first trimester, which is, for a lot of Americans, a reasonable cutoff point. A lot of Americans believe that if you want to have an abortion after your first trimester, you shouldn't be allowed to, which I kind of agree with, I see their point of view. In fact, Polling shows that many Americans hold views similar to Trump's on the issue. A Gallup poll last year showed that about 60% of Americans believe in allowing some access to abortion but support certain restrictions. These people aren't necessarily on either extreme. They see abortion as an issue that has been handled or needs to be handled with sensitivity and limits. They want a balance. A lot of Americans want a balance. They want something between never allowing abortion and something in between allowing it in all cases. I think Trump's stance reflects that balance. For a lot of people, their problem with the abortion is that some people tend to use abortion as an effective way of birth control. It's about acknowledging the potential of life while also recognizing the complexity of individual situations, which now leads us to the rising abortion rates we're seeing this year. Abortion numbers are reportedly higher in 2024 than in previous years, and I think it's important to ask why. Why are more women choosing abortion, and what's changed in society? My personal answer to that question is in some cases, I believe that people see it as a way out. In some cases, people are using it as a form of birth control. And in other cases, people just don't want to take responsibility for their actions. I really want to focus on that don't want to take responsibility for their actions. Close your legs, use a condom, take all the necessary steps and precautions that you can to not get pregnant. Why should a child, an infant, right, have to die? An unborn child, right? And that's usually the debate a lot of people get into is that, it's an unborn child and it's feeding off of me. And if I die, the baby dies too. That's really selfish. And I think a lot of the people who have these arguments that, oh, it's my body, it's my choice, I don't have to be pro life, still forget the simple fact that every day you're alive, every time you celebrate your birthday is a literal shining example that your mother chose to be pro life. Your mother could have easily chosen to have an abortion, but instead she didn't. So the same choice that your mother made to have you should have for others, right? But let that just be an example for people. Every time you celebrate a birthday, it just goes to show that your mother chose life. She was pro-life. Now let's dive into the numbers. The CDC reported that the number of abortions performed in the United States has risen significantly this year, with estimates suggesting over 1 million procedures nationwide. That's a notable increase compared to previous years, and it's raising questions about what's causing this spike. Is it due to financial pressures, limited access to healthcare, or perhaps a lack of support systems for women facing unplanned pregnancies? One reason could be economic challenges. Many women who seek abortions cite financial instability as a major factor in their decision. Studies show that the majority of women who have abortions live at or below the poverty line, and about 73% of them say they cannot afford to raise a child. In recent years, inflation and the rising cost of living have made it even harder for people to feel financially secure. So for some women, abortion might feel like the only option when they're already struggling to make ends meet. There's also the impact of the Dobbs decision, which shifted abortion regulations to the states, which is something I did want to focus on for just 1 second. A lot of people think that Donald Trump is trying to outlaw abortion nationwide. That's it. Donald Trump has made it perfectly clear that he would like to leave the choice of abortion in the hands of the state. He believes that it is not a decision that he should be making as the president of the United States. He believes that he should not have a say in that because, again, that's how you become a dictator, telling people what they can and can't do with their, reproductive rights or whatever. That's how you become a dictator, telling them, I'm going to make the final decision. But instead, he said, we'll leave it up to the states. And that way, the people can choose whether or not they want abortion to be illegal where they live. Right? So he doesn't have final say, the people in your states do. So if you really feel that strongly about having, abortion rights, start a petition, but instead of bashing our president-elect or saying all these rude things about him, making these rude comments about him, you could easily just vote it into your state, right? And make it legal. So if it's something you feel passionately about, Bring it up the next time, there's a city council meeting. Try to get it on the city council's board so that maybe they can review it. Try to, get it out there so that you can, your voice can be heard. But just bashing someone who is going to be the president of the United States and saying that he is pro-life and he, is trying to control people's bodies is a false accusation. It's a rude accusation, and it's really an ignorant accusation when you really think about it. The patchwork system has created with what some call abortion tourism, where women from states with stricter laws travel to states with more access. This can drive up numbers in those states, but it also highlights the inconsistencies in our system. Let's dive to something very, very quickly, right? We're going to veer far left really quickly. Let's talk about Planned Parenthood and the federal funding debate. Planned Parenthood is one of the largest providers of reproductive health care services in the United States. They offer cancer screenings, STD testings, contraceptive services, and more. But they're also one of the main providers of abortion services. According to their own annual reports, they perform over 300,000 abortions a year. I'm going to say that number one more time for you, just so you can hear it. That is 300,000 abortions a year. Okay, that's not every 2 years, not every 4 years. That is every year. That's about 833 abortions a day, which, when you really think about it, is a lot. This has led to the heated debate over whether they should have received federal funding, especially considering that a portion of their funding comes from taxpayers' dollars. Each year, Planned Parenthood receives about $500 million in federal funding. Now, technically, federal funds aren't supposed to be used for abortions due to the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits federal dollars from directly funding the procedure. However, many people argue that the money indirectly supports abortion services by covering other expenses, like staff salaries or facility maintenance, which enables Planned Parenthood to continue providing abortions. The question here is morale. Should someone who is opposed to abortion be forced to contribute to it through their taxes? A lot of pro-life advocates say no. I am one of those people that say no. I am against abortions unless it is for the life of the mother. And I believe if it's rape, incest, or for the life of the mother, if it's those three cases, you should be seeing a doctor. And if you look at your doctor and you say, hey, I was raped, I would like an abortion, they need to call the police so you can report your rape. Whether you believe it's going to help or not, whether you believe it's going to get solved or not, it still needs to be reported. And even with incest, right, that is also something that needs to be reported because it's illegal. And then for the life of the mother, if the mom is going to die, then absolutely they should have an abortion, right? There's no reason for a mother to die, give up her life over a child. But if she would like to, that's totally up to her. That is her decision. But it's only in those three extreme cases that an abortion should be legal. A lot of pro-life advocates argue that if Planned Parenthood wants to provide abortions, they should do so without relying on federal funds. And in fact, many Americans agree. Surveys have shown that around 60% of Americans are opposed to federal funding for abortions, even if they support the right to access abortion in certain cases. There are alternatives to Planned Parenthood that could provide the same essential healthcare services without performing abortions. Community health clinics, for instance, offer many of the same services like prenatal care, STD testing, and contraception without offering abortions. These clinics are often in low-income neighborhoods and provide affordable care to people who need it most. Imagine if we took some of the federal funding going to Planned Parenthood and redirected it to these community clinics. We could provide necessary health services to more people without the ethical concerns that come with the funding and organization that performs abortions. Let's think about it from this angle. What if instead of focusing on abortion access, we worked on creating a system where women feel supported to carry their pregnancies to term? Right now, 73% of women who choose abortion say that they do so because they can't afford to raise a child. What if we address the financial instability directly? What if we put resources into affordable childcare, housing support, job training, and healthcare? We could reduce the demand of abortion by addressing the root causes that lead women to feel like they have no other option. Let's shift to the focus to an area that often comes up in the abortion debate, and that's the role of the feminist movement in promoting pro-choice messaging. A common phrase we hear from some advocates is, my body, my choice. On the surface, it seems straightforward, right? A woman has a right to make decisions about her own body. But when you break it down, you realize that the slogan isn't considering the full picture, especially in the case of pregnancy where another life is involved. In many ways, my body, my choice arguments oversimplify a complex issue. Yes, a woman has a bodily autonomy, but there's another body involved here, another life that has its own right and potential. Just because that life is developing inside her doesn't make it any less valuable. And while I respect a woman's right to choose what she wants to do with her body deeply, I also believe that respecting the rights of an unborn child should be part of the conversation. If we truly want equality and justice for everyone, then we have to value life at all stages. Sorry, you guys. I have something caught in my throat. The idea that the mother's choice should be the only consideration raises some ethical questions about the rights of the unborn child. If we believe that every life has worth, then we can't ignore the potential of that life just because it hasn't yet entered the world. Everyone, and I think where people get lost at is, right, we believe that everyone has, value to the world. Everyone's life has value. And if we stand on that point and we look at it from that point, just because a child isn't in the world, that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. But if I murder someone, I am labeled as a murderer. And it's no different than what the mom is choosing to do to the child, right? And when you think about it, technically, abortion is first-degree murder, right? Abortion is first-degree murder simply because it was premeditated. You planned on having the abortion, the child died, and you're okay with it. It was premeditated. But if someone were to go out and kill another human being, they're labeled as a murderer. They're all of these different things. The idea that the mother's choice should only be the consideration really raises some ethical questions about the rights of the unborn child. If we believe that every life has worth, then we cannot ignore the potential of that life just because it hasn't yet entered the world. The feminist movement has made some incredible strides for women's rights. But when it comes to the abortion debate, I think the focus should shift from my body, my choice to recognizing the shared responsibility and the value of the child's life. And that also brings me to something that's rarely discussed, the double standards that exist when it comes to men's roles in pregnancy and parenting. Let me give you the scenario. We often see that a woman is pregnant and doesn't want a baby. She has the option to have an abortion and can legally end the pregnancy, often without input from the father. She can say, my body, my choice, and decide to end that life. But if a man doesn't want a baby, he doesn't have that same option. If the child is born, he is still expected to take responsibility, pay child support, and be involved, even if he wasn't ready or willing to be a parent. Now, I'm not saying men shouldn't take responsibility when they father a child. Parenthood is a serious commitment, and both parents play a role in creating life. But it's interesting to think about how society frames these situations differently for men and women. A man who doesn't want to be involved is often labeled as a deadbeat dad, a term loaded with stigma and shame. But a woman who doesn't want to be involved has the option of abortion, and in many circles, she's supported for making that choice, and she is choosing her body, her choice, but she's not yet labeled as a murderer. If we're going to have a fair and honest conversation about rights and choices, we need to recognize these inconsistencies. Men and women are equally responsible for creating life, but they don't have equal say in what happens next. If a woman can make a decision based on her readiness for parenthood, shouldn't a man have the same level of input too? This isn't about taking rights away from a woman. It's about acknowledging that we have a complex system where the outcomes for men and women are very different. These issues of fairness and equality highlight some of the ways that the feminist movement, while it's done incredible things and incredible work in other areas, might be overlooking the complexities of this debate. It's important to support women's rights, but we also need to be open to hearing men's perspectives and considering the ethical questions surrounding unborn children's rights. Real equality means balancing the rights of both parents and recognizing the inherent value of the unborn life involved. I want to wrap up by saying that I believe every unborn child has the potential for a future and deserves a chance at life. But I also recognize that not every situation is simple. There are circumstances where difficult choices have to be made, and I support making exceptions in those cases. Like President elect Donald Trump, I believe that there is a middle ground here, supporting access to abortion in cases of rape, incest, and when the mother's life is at risk, while limiting the time frame from something reasonable like 12 to 15 weeks. I think that's a balance that respects both the potential of life and the complexities of each individual situation. The rising abortion rates are a call for us to do more. This isn't just about making laws, it's about creating a society where women feel empowered to choose life, where they know there are support systems available to them, and where no one feels forced into a decision because of financial or social pressure. That is all that I have for you guys today. I definitely want to try to make these episodes a little bit longer, but that is all that I, had prepared for today. So, yeah, that's it. That's all we got for today. I know this is a tough issue and not everyone is going to agree with my perspective, but I hope that by sharing my views and diving into these details, I've given you something to think about. Whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, or somewhere in between, I think we all want a society where a woman feels supported and valued, and where every life has the opportunity to thrive. Thanks for tuning in to I Said It, I'm Not Sorry. Stay thoughtful, stay informed, and remember, we may not always agree, but we can have the conversation. And I will catch you next time.